We're a little bit behind and we want to get you to lunch on time, so let's zip through this. We're going to talk about the digital revolution that's not just changing the way we watch TV, but the very fabric of entertainment itself. That's precisely what OTT platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime are doing. They're not just disrupting the industry, they're rewriting the rules, sparking trends, and opening doors to a world of infinite possibilities. And we are exploring this brave new world in this session. Please give me a small welcome to Jonathan Cummings and Brooke Schaefer. We're going to talk about OTT platforms, trends, challenges, and opportunities. Please come to the stage. Are you here? Where y'all at? Coming to the stage, Jonathan Cummings and Brooke Schaefer. Do you have microphones? Got a mic check?
Here, mic
Take
check.
mine.
Hello?
Yeah, mine definitely works, right?
Okay, mine works now.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone.
Well, it's Vegas, so 11 is still morning here.
I mean, allegedly, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm here from New York City, so the 6-hour flight and getting in at 3 in the morning was kind of rough for me, but I'm here. I'm awake. I'm awake. But how's everyone feeling? Especially after that last speech,
That's right.
right? That's good. Well, I mean, I hope the energy gets lifted up a little bit more, but I'm really glad to be here, and I'm really happy to be doing this fireside chat with Brooke as well. So a little bit about myself. So, after that last conversation, I'm like, should I really just do this elevator pitch? Should I tell everyone, right?
Absolutely.
Well, so I currently work at Deloitte as an alliance manager. And so with being an alliance manager, it's about go-to-market strategies, sales operations, marketing, all those things. But beyond the private sector day job, I'm involved with several nonprofits and international affairs. I started my career working within the United Nations space. So, I'm pretty plugged in over there. It's fun, it's cool. And right now I live in New York City, and I look forward to getting to know each and every one of you at a networking session. So, thank you.
And where are you from originally?
Oh, yeah. So I'm
Your
originally
accent?
so I'm originally from Jamaica. I'm originally from Kingston, Jamaica. I moved to the States 16 years ago, lived in New York, upstate New York, went to college there, my master's at Cornell and everything. And now I'm in New York City, lived in DC, and I'm back in New York. But yeah, everyone in New York City has an accent,
Okay, so I guess I'll introduce myself now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm Brooke Schaefer. I'm the CEO of a company called CMI in Atlanta, Georgia. We do marketing research and data analytics. So I know there were some data questions earlier. I know we're talking about OTT, but I can also answer some data questions too. Prior to being at CMI, I was at AT&T and DirecTV, and so have a lot of experience in over-the-top, which we're going to be talking about today. I ran the wireless customer base of 63 million wireless customers, and before that, I started the go-to-market strategy team for both DirecTV and for AT&T. So.
All right. So you see who I'm being paired with, right? So to kickstart the conversation, I'll be serving a little bit as the moderator, but I seek for this conversation to be organic. It'll be a little conversational style. And hopefully, if any of you have any questions, feel free to raise your hands and jump in. We want this to be engaging, fun. I mean, you all are in Vegas, right? So let's have some fun.
Let's not wait till the end for questions.
Absolutely. So, Brooke, can you please provide a brief overview of OTT services and how they've evolved over the past years?
Sure. Okay. So OTT stands for over the top. That is video, but there's actually two types. So there's SVOD, which is your subscription based on demand. And then there's OTT. For the purposes of today, we're just going to combine them and just talk OTT. OTT is just internet video. So it circumvents cable, it circumvents satellite, or all your traditional. The main way to think about what OTT is it doesn't have hardware. So you don't have an installer coming into your house and setting up anything. You can just use your smart TV to set it up, which as an industry really takes down the cost of entry because you don't have any of the setup costs. You start recouping your costs immediately. Whereas for traditional video, cable, or like DirecTV for satellite, it took probably a year to 2 years to recoup costs because you had an installer that came in, you had hardware that you had to install into a house, you had to drill holes, etc. Right? We just had the same thing for internet in our house, and you got to have somebody come into your house and install the whole thing. That does not happen. But the other thing is because there's no cost to entry, there's also no cost to exit. So there's no termination fees. And while you have a subscription, you can leave at any time. So the dynamic in the marketplace is incredibly different.
So, based on that description, so Netflix, Disney Plus, all those are examples of OTT, right?
Okay, so Netflix technically is an example of an SVOD, but we can talk about it as an OTT here because it doesn't have any live streaming. And that's actually really important when you think about it from an advertiser standpoint and also from the FCC standpoint of putting ratings on shows and what that actually means for all of your content that you're putting out. However, they have figured out a way to advertise, so we're probably going to talk about that at some point. But yes, Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus, Amazon, DirecTV, Fios, they all have OTT services and SVOD services.
Well, I mean, so I look at, say, HBO Max, right?
Yes.
So HBO Max is really starting to incorporate the live stream thing.
Yes.
I mean, they're doing live stream sports, especially with the World Cup coming up. I'm pretty sure you'll see a lot of that. Right?
Yes.
But do you think Netflix at some point will jump into the live stream race as well?
You know, it's a good question. They have done one live. I don't know for Netflix how much they'll eventually go into it because actually doing live is very complicated, putting it out because now you start getting into the realm of from a legal standpoint you start getting into the realm of where the FCC falls in and what the guidance is for that. So Netflix is doing very well as it is, and I'm not sure they would probably take on the headache of trying to accomplish that, but they might because it is becoming a saturated market and they're going to have to start to find new ways to grow within the market that they have right now and continuing to keep their audience.
And how can basic cable adapt to all of this?
That's a great question. So basic cable right now you can get that as part of OTT. I don't think in the future consumers that are just using basic cable today, I do think that's eventually going to go away. There are certain services that you can get basic cable right now for free, but very few people do that. I don't think that that's going to necessarily be a long-term play because you still have to have hardware for that.
Yeah, I hear you. Because I mean, the last time I watched basic cable, if I'm being completely honest, was when I checked into this hotel, and TNT was up. But I mean, now I feel like my video streaming services revolve around Netflix, which my family, my mom and
Yep.
sisters use, and HBO and all these things, right?
Yep.
But you know, with the evolution of OTT, it seems almost like a lot of these streaming services are starting to kind of become cable,
Yes.
trying to almost replace it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, in a lot of ways, it is the same thing. It's the mechanism at which you're getting the content that is different. So let's just take DirecTV, for example. So DirecTV has a satellite service. They took that exact same service and they put it for OTT, which at the time they called DirecTV Now. It's now changed to DirecTV Stream. And then YouTube now has a service very similar to that that's called YouTube TV. That is essentially the same thing. You get all the same packages. You can buy your packages the same way. They go to advertisers the same way. They have pods. They target both local and national for their ads. So it is the same in that regard. And a lot of times when they're purchasing something like that, the content that's king in something like that is going to be sports and live TV. I heard a couple people mention news and sports earlier. That is why people continue to purchase um, over the top. And even when you look at the ARPU numbers of customers, so an ARPU, for those that are not familiar with that term in the industry, is the average revenue per user. So the ARPU for an over-the-top stream platform is much higher. It's almost 4 times higher than an SVOD like Netflix. So a Netflix type service has to get a lot more subscribers. So their scale and their reach has to be a lot broader. It's one of the reasons why for Netflix everything's global, because they really can't create content and push it out global and push it out just to the United States and make the money that they need to make. They have to do it on a global scale. Whereas an over the top, like a direct TV stream or a YouTube TV that has sports content, that has advertising pods still, they can, and they have integrations, right? Like for news and things, they still can have very high ARPU. That's 4 times.
That makes a lot of sense, right? But in an interesting twist, you mentioned live TV makes me think about cable, right? And
Yep.
sports and everything.
Yep.
But what about reality TV shows?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So reality TV can fall into both buckets. So you can have reality TV that's pushed out on a service like on Amazon Prime or on Netflix. And in those cases, a lot of times we're starting to see them play around with doing one a week for the releases. And I'm sure for those that watch those kind of shows and it comes out once a week, it can be slightly annoying because you watch one and you're like, but I need the next one right now. Why do I have to wait a week? One of the reasons why they do that on those platforms is because they're trying to keep you on the platform. Remember, there's no early termination fee. And the game of this is to have as many users as possible for as long as possible. And the audience is really important to keep engaged. So reality TV is one of those that it's for a very broad audience. You can have the elusive Gen Z that likes reality TV. Across any generations, really. And so reality TV is one of those that they like to push, and they like to push on a weekly basis too.
All right. So before switching gears a little bit, talking about the technology, do we have any questions from the audience? Anyone?
Go for it.
Some of the things that you're seeing on interactive OTT platforms where you can actually click to purchase e-commerce features built into the actual content.
Like the click.
If you see a Turkish robe on this spa commercial, can you click on it and buy it? And also the role of wearables and Google Glass, being able to put on that lens, pick whatever API you want to see whatever pop-up, like MTV pop-up video back in the day, had all this cool stuff. Imagine if you could design your own API feed for watching content. Like, where is that going where you can actually make it transactional?
Yeah, it's a good question. For those that didn't hear, the question was twofold, but one, I'll start with the first one, which is like the VR or the content that you can be more immersive with. So there's been a lot of questions in the industry about what is the role of VR. I think as an industry, there was an expectation that it was going to really take off. And there was, you would see it all of these tech events for years, but it really didn't. And I think one of the reasons, there's a lot of different theories of why it really hasn't taken off, but my personal take of why I think it hasn't taken off is because OTT content has made content consumption so ubiquitous. So for example, like I'm binging a show on Netflix right now. And I downloaded the last 4 episodes and I watched them on the plane on my phone on the way here. And I finished it and it felt great. I know the ending now. But it's not like I'm going to go put on glasses on a plane and go finish that on the plane. I would look crazy. So VR is in such a specific circumstance that it almost takes us back to cable where you're tied to something. You have to be in your house at a specific event, and you're not really able to do it with anybody else and consume that content. And so there is a specific time for it. I just think it's going to be so much more niche than what people originally thought in the industry of where VR is going to play. But it's still there. I know Facebook is still really trying to push it with the Ray-Bans. But even in that case, it hasn't really taken off either, and I don't really see it taking off, to be honest. Um, the other question that you had was around click to purchase or interactions with OTT. At first, that was something that was tested, is the click to purchase. That really also hasn't taken off as much for a couple reasons. One is when you are streaming content, that content platform wants to keep you in the content platform. They have no desire to let you click and leave the content platform. And so what they're going to do is they're going to pay the money to actually track you to see if you go purchase it later based on the ad, but they're not going to say, hey, it's a really good idea for us to put up an ad that you can click and you can leave. Because again, no termination fees. I don't want to let you leave. I'm going to try to incentivize you as much as possible to stay and continue to consume content.
And kind of on the second part of your question, so when you're talking about having the experience API directly interact with the consumer based on the video content, showing particular products or whatever, I think that sounds like a whole unique business case that needs to be tested. Maybe something like Amazon Prime, right? I mean, they have a streaming service. Their purpose is to pretty much sell you products, e-commerce as well, right? But to Brooke's point, a part of keeping people, part of the thing with OTTs is to keep people on the platform. So having them go to an external site, that might be not so good for them. I mean, especially since, if we could all be honest, a lot of people have short attention spans. I know if I will have like 7 different windows open and I'm watching something and I click something,
Yeah.
I'll get distracted and X, Y, and Z. But if a company like, say, Amazon does it, maybe that's a business case that would be tested. You also made me think of this Netflix show called Black Mirror.
Mhm.
Black Mirror Bandersnatch, that particular one, that movie, where it was entirely interactive, which was so interesting, right? You had the movie, you went up and down and clicked the choices on what the character is supposed to do or whatever it may be. A Black Mirror Bandersnatch. So maybe that could be a future hypothesis, a future thing that could be tested. But that just came to mind based on of your question.
Yeah, and I guess one other point that I'll mention on the call to actions, the clicks, and trying to drive them outside of the content. You do see that on other video consumable platforms outside of OTT. So YouTube, for example, not YouTube TV, not the over-the-top streaming platform, but just regular YouTube. You will see that because again, it's not a subscription-based platform. So your audience that's there to actually monetize that is a different strategy of how to monetize that audience. So they are going to do pre-roll. They are going to let you click and do a conversion there because that is how they are getting paid more so than on an OTT platform.
And I mean, this actually also dovetails into the next question I was going to bring up about the technologies utilized in OTT. So, moving forward, what kind of technologies do you envision happening with the evolution of OTT as, you just become more dependent and obsessive with technology?
Yeah, I actually think the biggest technology, and I know it's been brought up a few times already, but is AI for OTT. And I don't know if anybody saw in the news recently, but Tyler Perry had come out recently. He's also in my hometown of Atlanta, his big production studio, and he had said that he was going to invest in a studio that was going to be for $800 million. And recently he said he put the entire thing on pause because he thinks there's no longer a need for an $800 million studio because AI is going to take away the need to do those very big type of studio shots because AI can actually, it's so quickly evolving that you can now create a very great background, cinematic background, and then your actor can actually see it and then go act the scene and it can get dropped into it. And so he said it will get rid of the need for that. And that does two things. One, cost completely goes down, right? Because now you don't need those big studios, but actually the cost to market too. So your time to market, your cost of the production is all going to decline because of that. Now, other things are going to decline too, right? The people that are going to be doing those type of jobs are going to have to come up with new skill sets in the entertainment. However, I do think that that is going to have a huge impact on content because content consumption is only going to increase. Um, and as it's just a subscription based service, keeping you engaged all the time, keeping you fed with new content that you like on a regular basis is so important. I mean, that's the name of the game. And so for them to be able to say that they might be able to circumvent some of that and come to market quicker in less money, the cost of the content is going to be less, and the time to do it is going to be less. So now I can produce more. It's going to be huge. And as costs of these services continues to rise, I think that's going to be one of the ways that they might start to dampen that.
So, kind of on that Gen AI thought process,
Uh-huh.
do you think with the advancements in Gen AI, all these technologies and everything, do you think that will ultimately help smaller OTT platforms or independent artists of those sorts?
Um, I think eventually, so I think right now we're seeing that the market is still in its disruptive phase. So if you go to other industries that have gone through similar type of things, I'll look at telecom, for example. So in telecom, you see that it went through a lot of different phases, and you saw that there are a lot of providers, and then it went to the rule of three, where you have to have three. I do think that's probably going to happen in OTT as well, is that right now you're in the disruptive phase, but you're starting to already see that they need consolidation to just survive because they have to negotiate. They have to have the power to negotiate for content. They have to be able to publish the content on different streaming platforms. And so I think whether it's three or if it's something else, I do think there's going to be consolidation down. So the smaller ones, I, I think will eventually probably go with the larger ones.
And how big is the OTT market? Just for,
Yeah,
just for a conversational sense, because I mean, I don't even know that, to be honest. Yeah.
yeah. So, all right. So the OTT market is growing at, I believe it's about a 5.5% CAGR each year for till 2029, if I remember that stat correctly. And the market in the US is fully saturated right now. So everybody has at least one OTT platform. And part of the issue is from a market share standpoint, everybody has multiples. You're stacking them right now. Globally, that's where it gets a little tricky because everybody has, there's some of these providers are just in the United States, some are global, like Netflix is global. I believe Netflix, um, I could be getting this wrong, is 6.9 billion in revenue from content right now. I don't know for its users.
I mean, that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, on top of just purely internet statistical base, I saw the statistic that in 2022, 82% of the usage on the internet has just been video streaming,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
That's true. Yeah. So out of all content consumption, video consumption is the number one on a daily basis. And then that's quickly followed by um, social media and podcasts. Hmm.
oh, yep.
Have you seen anything specifically within syndicated television to keep up, whether that's lowering media buy spots costs or timing between ads, say from the generic 60 to 30 to a 15 or 6
Hmm.
within the syndicated space? Like, have you seen any push for them to try to keep up, or is it just kind of like, hey, all of it was lost, let's just let OTT do it?
That's a really good question. So his question was about the pods and are they going to stay in the current format for the pods of it being the 60-second pods? Are we going to move more to the 15-second pods? How is this going to work? So there are 15 seconds today. I will say this is the push and pull with advertisers and platforms. So the advertisers themselves are really struggling to make the change. Like they want the 30-second spots and they really want things to stay traditional because that's the tried and true thing. I mean, if you talk to a CMO, they want to showcase their 30-second spot. They might even want a minute spot, you know, and they want the storyboard and they want to see it all and that is and they know how they're going to go copy test that and track that, et cetera. And so for them, changing this is going to be really tough. And they're the ones paying. And so I don't see that changing anytime soon because while content is king, I also think the pod structure is a big way that they're getting paid and in OTT. Now, does it work still? No, but I think they're going to still continue to do it for a while. I will say though, there is a push to start to do a lot more brand integrations. We're already starting to see that with Netflix. It's starting to come with Amazon Prime content too, where they're starting to do brand integrations, but that gets tricky. I think it's going to change with AI because with AI, I can see a world in the future where I might get targeted watching a spot, let's say on Netflix, and someone's pouring a Heinz ketchup bottle. And then you might get targeted for the exact same content and it's mustard, right?
Yeah.
And then maybe in a year from now, it becomes Heinz ketchup for you too if you watch it again. So, but right now, the problem with brand integration is it's static. So you're stuck with that specific product for the next 10 years. And I think that's why brands don't do it as much. But eventually, I can see a world where AI can continue to evolve that. And then the 15, 30-second pod spots start to go away.
And just one quick point, and we have a question over there. So um, your response also made me think about how, say, like Amazon and HBO, they have. I will just use Amazon as a perfect example. They have like Stars Plus and MGM Plus and everything,
Yes.
right? So I mean, it kind of makes me think that maybe at some point Amazon will get obsessive and just want to buy up Stars completely.
Yeah.
Monopolize the content.
So so Stars or HBO or any of those other they're on-demand services. The It's interesting because technically Amazon is also an on-demand service. So what they're really doing there is they're stacking on-demand content. So it's just yet another way to keep you in their ecosystem, their platform. So they know that they don't have enough content on their own for you to just watch their content all the time. So what they're doing is they're saying, "Hey, you can all if you also have a subscription to Stars or you also have a subscription to HBO, you can integrate that into our content and you can search for that too. We'll recommend that content to you as well. And that's yet another way for them to keep you in their platform.
All right. Question over there.
Yes. Yeah. So the question, if I understand it, is if you're an advertiser and you're targeting a specific content and you want to you want to advertise within that, which one of the platforms should you be advertising in and how should you be thinking about it? Well, there's a couple things there. One is if you're the advertiser, first you need to start with getting what your audience is that you're going to go target for it and how engaged that platform is. Not all platforms are created equal for engagement. So some of these platforms, they might have a lot of audience of users, but they might not be very engaged. I mean, I hate to pick on Amazon, but Amazon Prime versus Netflix is probably a good example. Everybody that has Amazon Prime for shipping also has Amazon Prime for video. That doesn't necessarily mean they watch it. So the number of users that they are going to say that they have might be different than actually how many that they're actually consuming the content. So you have to be very careful about that. And then you also you have to look at what engagement looks like. Your media company should be very good at trying to help you to understand who your target audience is. But also I would say it's not about picking the specific content that you should be advertising with. It's about picking the audience that you want to go after and making sure that they're really engaged and you're repeatedly going after them, because it's not just the reach of your audience, but it's the frequency at which you're going to go after them that needs to be important for you in terms of your advertising. And then the third piece is if you're picking a specific property to target, it needs to match with your brand. And so you have to be careful with that too. But in terms of, let's say you went through that whole entire exercise and you said, okay, I like that property, I do want to advertise with them, then you do need to look at engagement, how many are actually, and when I say engagement, it is how long you're actually staying with the spot. That's why Netflix drops some content often, and we all think, well, I like that show. Why did they not do it again? It's because it wasn't really highly engaging. People were dropping off. So engagement is probably the number one thing that you need to look at outside of your audience.
And you're making me think about my own behaviors as a consumer.
Yeah.
So I have Amazon Prime. Yeah, that's it. So Amazon Prime.
Those are the only two?
Those I have Amazon Prime, but whether
No
or not I
live
watch
TV. Huh. I guess
No.
maybe Amazon. You can do live TV on Amazon.
Yeah, I mean, I have Amazon Prime, for shipping and everything.
Yeah.
And I watch.
Do you watch sports?
Yeah, I just go to a bar, right?
Oh, you go to a bar. Okay. All right. This is interesting. Yeah.
But as far as engaging on the video service,
Yeah.
I try to do it because I have Amazon Prime.
Yeah.
But I find myself more on Netflix or HBO or even YouTube. YouTube.
Yes.
A lot. I'm on YouTube.
Yes.
Because I feel like I have a lot more control over what I see on YouTube.
Yes.
And the algorithms know me a little better, so it feels more personalized.
So, anecdotal for YouTube. So I think that this is going to be a struggle in the future with YouTube and what over the top is, because I think as a consumer, this was a great example. He just bucketed them both together into video content consumption. But however, from a distribution standpoint, those two are very, very, very different because, for example, I'll give you an example going back to my AT&T days. So one of my many different roles at AT&T, I did I worked with talent that AT&T had, and so we were putting on for the Super Bowl a concert with Taylor Swift at the time, and we wanted to go put that out live on DirecTV and DirecTV Stream. That actually posed to be incredibly challenging because DirecTV is not a content publisher. We are a distributor. And so actually figuring out how to get all of that content in and getting it approved by the FCC and getting a rating and doing this real time and making sure that there wasn't going to be anything that, we got in trouble for. This started to feel like live sports very quick, and we were not equipped. And so we had to quickly pull out of doing that at the last minute, and we ended up having to publish it on social media platforms and doing it through YouTube and doing it through Instagram and through Facebook, which is really unfortunate because that's a major platform that would love to have that content on there to keep engagement up. And it was Taylor Swift. And then the same thing happened again with Jennifer Lopez for another concert. But it became an issue because of the legality involved in getting the ratings and making sure that you're following all the rules and all of the metadata behind the scenes, which you don't have to do on these other social media platforms. They don't have to abide by the same laws. And so, from a consumer standpoint, we all think it's the same, but actually, from a distribution standpoint, these are very, very, very different. And so, I think there's going to come a time that the rubber's going to meet the road, and the FCC is going to have to figure out what to do about this, because from a consumer, it all just blends together, but it's actually not together.
And quickly on this, so I, as someone who loves social media, can you talk a little bit about the relationship with social media and OTT platforms? And I know Congress is pretty much trying to ban TikTok. So
Yes.
how do you think that will impact the future of OTT platforms, content creation, and digital economy? Big
Yeah,
question.
that's a good question. You think it's going to happen?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
might start a revolution, but you know,
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's going to
TikTok.
happen. I go back and forth based on the hour if I think it's going to happen or not. Well, I think that the major thing is that we see in general that the government's getting much more involved in the data piece of it. So it's actually really not TikTok that is the issue. They don't really care how you consume the content on TikTok. It's what TikTok is doing with the data in the background that's the problem. And I think we're starting to see that more and more and more, and it's going to continue to be the thing is data security, data preservation. What does that mean? Are we listening to conversations? What are you doing with that information? Data privacy is huge. PII, personal identifiable data, is just enormous. And so I think TikTok is a really interesting one. I don't know. I'm probably the only person I've ever met that actually I downloaded TikTok and I read all of the legal before you can
Really?
click the button. Yeah, because I was interested in what it actually was going to tell me. Did it actually talk about personal identifiable information? Does it tell me that it's going to listen to my conversations? Because it clearly does, the ads that it's giving me. And it doesn't say any of that. So I think that's the problem, right? It's not transparent about what it's actually doing, but it's doing a lot more behind the scenes. And then that data is being stored overseas, which means that there's no control over that. And so because it's listening to conversations through AI and machine learning, then what does that actually really mean in terms of what it can do on a grander scale when it starts to link conversations together and starts to think about that, knows where you're traveling, et cetera, and it can start to pick up on who you are, right? On a one-off basis, I mean, I'm sure they don't care about me on a personal level, but when they start to think about how we all talk, what we talk about,
And who you're
what
connected to and
matters,
everything.
exactly, the social cues and the social structures. I think that's the more important thing, because then that starts to they can use that. And so I think that's the concern with TikTok and with others. And again, that goes back to data privacy for TikTok and with all these other platforms, and just data in general is data privacy and the ethical nature of data.
Well, I mean, we have,
We are 2 minutes
yes.
away.
Any last questions? Quickly. Yep. Um,
I couldn't
can you
hear
speak
your
a little louder,
question,
please?
sorry. Oh, yeah.
You guys have any insights? How you think they're going to be able to, I guess, produce more personalized ads for people that have Vizios in their living room right now?
Yeah, so his question is that Walmart just acquired Vizio recently. So I do think that video content and over the top and SVOD streaming and just content in general, even like social media like YouTube, I think that aggregators are going to start to be the wave of the future. So akin to music, where you have your creators, your publishers, and then you have these aggregators like Spotify that are just pulling it all together. I think that there is going to be a world soon that we're going to have aggregators, because I think consumers are all getting sick of going to multiple platforms to figure out where their content is. There's some tricky things to that. You have to have enough metadata to have an aggregator to then recommend the right things across all these platforms. But let's just say we get there. I think Walmart is getting savvy, because if they can aggregate it through a smart TV platform, and then they can start to advertise and start to see your data real time, and then they now have other data on you through Walmart shopping behaviors, you can start to get really smart about what to be targeting, because now I know who you are. You bought that with your credit card that you also use for all your other Walmart purchases. And now I know that, you're buying diapers too, and you're also buying, these type of shoes all the time, and you're buying only organic food. Well, guess what? I'm going to be putting those ads to you. So from an advertiser standpoint, eventually, if they go the aggregator route, which I think they will with Vizio, I think that that's probably where it's going to end up, which is very smart of them. And something Amazon should be doing, but they're not.
Yeah, right. So data, money, content, and power, right? So
Yeah.
data is a new digital is a new oil, right? You've all it has been. Yeah. Now everyone
I
just
think
wants it.
so. I think so.
Yeah. Now it's just now people are just making a more publicly conscious effort about taking it, right? But the privacy aspect, that's all government stuff. We don't have time for that.
Yeah. All right. I think we're at
Give it
time.
up for our panel, guys. Thank
Thank you.
you.